nothing they can do but keep pushing forward because they can't do it a different day. There's 156,000 other men that are about to hit the beaches, and if they don't take out these guns, they are going to get bombarded with 155 millimeter artillery fire. And to make things worse, because the Rangers are 30 minutes behind schedule, it means they've got about 20 minutes to scale a 100-foot cliff under enemy gunfire, get up there, fight the enemy, and destroy the artillery before everybody else starts landing on the beach. Because they're still back 50 yards away, kicking off at their little camp, leaving the guns completely unmanned. So they both sneak up to these gun emplacements, and Lamel tells Jack, hey, give me your thermite grenade, keep your gun pointed on those guys over there. If they start coming towards us, light them up, and that'll be my signal to hop out of the hole, and we'll try to run off back to Dog. So Jack postures up with his gun pointed at the Germans off in the distance. Lamel hops down in the hole. He starts using these thermite grenades. Now, it's a grenade, but it doesn't go boom. It's not loud. It just burns at 4,000 degrees. And he takes one of these grenades, shoves it down the first gun barrel, goes to the next one, shoves another thermite grenade down that gun barrel. He's out of thermite grenades. Every ranger was in an issue one. He knows he's going to have to go back and get more thermite grenades and come back to destroy these guns, but he can't leave 4 guns perfectly operational. Anything can happen between now and then. So what he does is he takes his coat off, wraps it around the buttstock of his rifle, and uses it to quietly break all the sighting equipment that he possibly can. And he's just jamming shit and all the traversing mechanisms, doing everything he can to ruin these guns the best he can without more thermite grenades. Once he's satisfied, him and Jack run back to Dog Company, get more thermite grenades, go back to the guns. Thank God they're still not guarding them, and they finish destroying the other soldiers. He's a great mate. The mission accomplished. Now Dog Company just has to go hold this road for 24 hours until they get hit with reinforcements from Omaha and Utah Beach. As they're walking back to Dog Company, Jack kind of looks over at Lamel and is like, you know, probably a good thing we didn't get in a firefight back there. I've only got 1 magazine of ammunition. At which point Lamel is like, wait, why? He's like, I lost it at some point during, you know, all the climbing and running around from bomb crater to bomb crater. So yeah, I've only had 15 bullets in me this entire time. He's like, why didn't you ask me for some? And Jack's like, I don't know, I didn't think about it. Regardless, they make their way back over the road to link back to the Dog Company. When they get there, Dog Company is in the middle of a firefight. Dog Company's on one side of the road, hiding in some foxholes or a ditch or whatever. On the other side of the road, there's a house and a German machine gun nest that they're having this firefight with. Lamel gets in there and figures out what's going on. Basically, his entire company is planning on just bum rushing a German machine gun nest. And he's like, well, hold on. He's feeling pretty good at this time, right? I mean, he took out those guns basically by himself. He's got that main character energy flowing. He's like, all right, here's the deal. You guys stay here. Hand me that bazooka. Arm the charge in the back. I'll take care of this. So they arm the charge in the back, hand him the bazooka. He goes running up, pops up out of the ditch with the bazooka, aims at the machine gun nest. They start returning fire. Lamel fires a bazooka. Click! His guys didn't arm the bazooka round the right way. So he almost gets shot, ducks back down into the ditch. Well, that was kind of it's only going to work once strategy, so we can't really replicate that now. So it looks like we are going to bum rush this machine gun position. So he starts getting his guys ready, and he's counting down, and one of his guys just jumps the gun, 1, 2, and he jumps up and goes to run. Germans open up with machine gun fire. He stumbles back into the trench and ends up landing on one of the other Rangers' bayonets on his thigh. So now he's another guy down just from him being the dumbass. So they get that guy bandaged up, leave him in the trench, and the rest of them go assault this machine gun nest, take it out. Now they've secured the road. From there, Lamel's got 12 guys left. He picks the 2 fastest guys and instructs them to run back to Pointe du Hoc, taking separate routes. That way, if one of them get caught, the other one should, in theory, still make it back. And deliver the message to Lieutenant Colonel Rutter. Mission accomplished. We've destroyed the guns, and I desperately need reinforcements up to hold this road. Luckily, both men end up making it back to Rutter. They deliver the message. He's super happy. The problem is, all of the Rangers' communication equipment got damaged with all the water from the beach landing. In addition to that, they asked for more reinforcements to be able to hold Pointe du Hoc and secure the road. Unfortunately, there are so Rutter sends those guys back to him with the message, hold until duly relieved. Not exactly what the man wanted to hear, but that's what we got to do. So him and his men are just hiding, waiting to ambush anybody who's coming out of this ditch. Luckily, after a couple of hours, more Rangers show up, about 50, 60 guys, and they line up along the road too. The Rangers are going to spread out, covering about 300 to 400 yards of this road. About an hour later, an entire German battalion attacks, but they attack all the way on the other end of the Ranger formation. Lamel and Dog Company are the furthest away from us, so Lamel orders his men to hold their fire and not give up their position. That way, they're there to surprise them in case they try to flank the other Rangers. The Rangers repel the attack fairly quickly, which tells Lamel he definitely made the right decision because that was just testing. They wanted to know how many Rangers were there, where they were at, and what they were capable of. and now they don't know that Lamel and Dog Company are going to help you. About an hour later, the Germans attack again, and they attack so hard, so quick, that they end up fracturing the Ranger line, and the other two companies are forced to retreat. And by the time Lamel gets word that they're retreating, the Germans are already behind him, and he's completely cut off. So with the rest of the Rangers being driven back, and Lamel and Dog Company being the only ones left behind enemy lines to guard this road, that's exactly what they're going to do. They're going to continue to guard the road, prevent reinforcements from making it to the beach, because that's what the mission is. Back at Point Du Hoc with the rest of the 2nd Ranger Battalion, they are boxed in on 3 sides by the Germans, and they have the ocean to their back. They have nowhere to go, and they are just stuck there trying to survive. Rudder finally comes to the realization that Dog Company has more than likely been killed in action since they didn't make it back with everything else. So with that in mind and needing to keep himself from being overrun, he calls for naval gunfire into the enemy lines, which is actually where Lamel and Dog Company are. The USS Texas begins bombarding that exact area. For the next 2 days, the Rangers at Point Du Hoc fight for their survival, while Lamel and Dog Company are stuck behind enemy lines, guarding the road, where the USS Texas is constantly bombarded. They pretty much just have to keep their heads down, hope that a large formation of Germans don't come looking for them, and hope that the USS Texas doesn't blow them off the face of the earth. Despite all of this, Lamel is still determined to stop reinforcements from making it to the beach, and if they do come marching by, he is going to attempt to do something about it. With only 12 men, it's almost certainly a death sentence. But luckily, that doesn't end up happening. So while that's good, it is still a very long, very shitty 2 days, because this entire mission was only supposed to be about a 12-hour ordeal. None of the Rangers packed food. They packed very little water. They are all starving. They're dehydrated, and at one point they all have to start using their helmets as trains. Then on the 2nd day, the Sherman tanks come rolling up from the beach. They drive the Germans back. Lamel and Dog Company are able to regroup with the rest of the 2nd Ranger Battalion. Lamel reports back to Rudder. Rudder's pumped. He thought Lamel and Dog Company were dead. And then Rudder realizes, oh shit, I've had the USS Texas shooting cars at you guys for the past 48 hours. My bad. At which point Lamel presumably is like, don't worry about it, I've got plot armor, it's no big deal. And again, I'm assuming here, but it's around this point where Lamel goes, oh shit, I got shot 2 days ago. And he pulls up his shirt, looks at his gunshot wound, it's right to the side through the muscle. And this is all the ordnance, but it's been like 3 days since he got shot, and he has not been in a very clean environment. And his wound is black and severely infected. Lamel is loaded up on a boat, sent out to the hospital ship. On the hospital ship, the surgeon is like, that's too much for me to handle here, and he gets sent back to Britain. While at Britain, Lamel undergoes surgery, gets treated with antibiotics, after he's recovered enough to actually, be given some kind of assignment, and basically determined by the chain of command, okay, basically sent you in on a death mission, you got shot, you're the one who took out the guns, you've done enough, so we're not going to send you back to the combat, we're actually going to split you in charge of this prison, and this prison is full of American soldiers that skipped out the beach. And Lamel is not even a little bit interested. He basically goes AWOL, hitchhikes back to the front line, and links back up with the 2nd Ranger Battalion in Dog Company. So he makes back to the guys. They're only like 7 miles further inland than they would have been actually left. And everybody kind of thinks the next battle of Normandy was like the opening scene of Saving Private Ryan. It was literally 45 minutes from the Battle of Normandy was almost 3 whole months. So they're still in the middle of the same battle where he was injured. He went back to a different country, got the surgery, and hitchhiked back to the front line of the very same overall major battle. Okay, if you're not picking up what I'm putting down, the enemy literally took out Leonard Lamel and he respawned into the same battle. Okay, this is the most main character shit that's ever happened. So he gets back to the 2nd Ranger Battalion. He is immediately given a promotion to Sergeant Major, the highest and most rank, and then he is also given the Distinguished Service Cross. Now, the Distinguished Service Cross is the 2nd highest award, yet right below the Medal of Honor. Which raises the question, why on earth does he not being awarded the Medal of Honor? And the answer to that actually lies with the 1st Ranger Battalion, that is currently basically a bunch of living legends after fighting for North Africa and Italy. Their commander, William Darby, they're affectionately known as Darby's Rangers. He felt that the Rangers were a group of individuals that fought on the battlefield together, but they were one singular entity because that's how tight their fleet was. So with that sentiment in mind, he kind of declared that Rangers weren't really eligible for the Medal of Honor because they didn't feel that one man should be honored, the entire unit should be honored. So on one hand, that's kind of cool, but on the other hand, it's kind of silly because he still allowed the Rangers to get every other singular individual awarded medal under the sun, including the Distinguished Service Cross, Silver Star, Gold Star, so why not let him get the Medal of Honor as well? It just seems kind of silly. And Lieutenant Colonel Rudder actually kind of agreed with me, and because of that, when he hit the Distinguished Service Cross on Lamel's chest, he told him, and I quote, "This is your Medal of Honor." From here, the Rangers are going out on missions, a couple of skirmishes here and there. They ended up before the Battle of Brest, it was hilltop and nobody else could take until Hill 63. They send the Rangers in, the Rangers take over the entire thing, they control the hill until the Battle of Brest is over, they've won. After that battle, we're going to get another promotion where you get the battlefield commission the second lieutenant, because of us. From there, the Rangers get sent over to a place called the Hertzgen Forest. Very, very dense forest, and it holds virtually no strategic advantage of the Allies, but for some reason, the Germans really seem to think it's important, so the Americans are just going to fight them for it, they don't even know why. And here's a kicker and sad/ironic part, but the Germans are actually running on the exact same logic. They also have no need for the Hertzgen Forest, and they don't know why they're fighting there. The only reason they're showing up and fighting so hard is because the Americans are showing up there and fighting so hard. So they think the Americans want it for some type of strategic advantage, and they have no idea why either. So literally both sides of this extremely deadly battle are just operating on, I don't know what you're up to, but fuck you, I'm not going to allow it. Why? So Lamell and the Rangers end up showing up, and he's thinking in his head, like, okay, I'm an officer now, they're going to send us into battle, I'm going to take the hard objective, whatever that is, we're going to win, hooray. But the leadership doesn't really understand how to use the Rangers or not how to use them yet, so they just end up putting them out on the line and going to hold this ground and don't let the Germans do it. And Lamell's pissed about this because A, this isn't how Rangers are supposed to do things, and B, this job absolutely sucks. You gotta remember, it's like October of 1944 over in like the Belgium, Germany area, okay, it's super cold, and all these guys are doing is basically hiding in their foxholes, freezing their asses off. So this goes on for like a month, just being cold, having the Germans drop artillery on top of them, and then after a month of seeing or making a day, they get orders to move out, they've got some dangerous mission. There's a count called Bergstein, and right next to that count is this gigantic hill, this castle held by the Germans, but the Americans call it Hill 400 because it is 400 meters high. Hill 400 is the high ground of the Hertzgen Forest, and it's a reason they're not making any headway in this battle because the Germans can see everything and just calling artillery on top of it anytime they try to move this forward. So the American forces have to make this hill in this town. The problem is every time they move the infantry regiment in, they just get beat back, and nobody can seem to penetrate and take over this town and this hill. The last American unit tried had just under 5,000 men in tanks, and they failed. So now they're considering the second Ranger Battalion with approximately 500 men. Well, now these guys talk about me and F. Rangers also take the hill, and all the other Ranger companies that we came to Berkshire. They spent days setting up patrols, finding every single German machine gun nest and fortification. And now that they know where every single German is, they launch a surgical attack and more than capture both Bergstein and the hill with an hour round. The problem is both Dog and Fox looked at the Rangers got killed during this attack, and now the Lamell is the only officer on the hill, and he's in charge of everything. So now he's got to hold this hill for the next 24 hours to reinforcements show up. It shouldn't be that hard. But what Lamell doesn't know is that the only objective that the Germans care about in the Hertzgen Forest is Hill 400. You see, Hill 400 is high enough that if the Allied cavalry, they're going to be able to see far enough into enemy lines that they're going to be able to see a massive German force massing, and they're going to know that a major German offensive is coming, and that is going to be our dead offensive for the Battle of the Bulge. This is Hitler's last-ditch effort to turn the tide of World War II, and it relies heavily on the element of surprise. As the Allies have Hill 400 and they see it coming, they can ruin the entire thing. So the Germans absolutely have to retake this hill. And because of that, the German general in charge sends in that whoever's able to retake that hill is all going to get their men Iron Crosses, which is like a very high-ranking German medal for valor, and they're all going to get 2 weeks of leave. Back in the hill, Lamell immediately orders all the Rangers to start digging foxholes because he knows light might be coming, he just doesn't know how bad. And either way, you need foxholes to play defense, so that's what they try to do. The problem, it's winter, there's snow and ice all over the ground, and there's tree roots all over this dirt, so whatever foxholes they're able to dig, they're not very deep. So an hour later, when the German artillery starts landing, it absolutely devastates every Ranger on top of that hill. Almost every Ranger on top of the hill is hit with shrapnel from German artillery. It's just a matter of how bad their individual injuries are. Lamell himself is also hit in the hand and his index finger is dangling by a piece of connective tissue. Between Dog and Fox Company, about 130 Rangers attack this hill. Right at the game, Lamell is already down to about 40 men that can move around and actually fight. And his mom's going to be pissed off because he's going to be able to defend and overcome things. Lamell realizes the playing conventional defense isn't going to work. He doesn't really have any foxholes, and even if he did, he doesn't have enough men to man. So he decides that defense is a good offense. He sends out 2 man scout squads, and they're going to patrol around the base of the hill. And whenever they see the Germans are starting to set up an attack, they're going to report back where the Germans are going to attack. And all of the men that Lamell has, all 40 to 50 guys, are going to run to meet that attack head on and drive them back. And that's exactly what happens. Shortly after that shelling, the Germans attack. Lamell and his men meet him head on and drive him back. They get shelled again. They scout, they find where the Germans are going to attack again, they meet it head on again. And this goes on over and over and over again. Liddell and his men are running around all over this hill, getting in every single firefight that there is, and when they're not doing that, they're trying to render aid to all the guys that are wounded. But to the Germans, it feels a lot different because every time they try to attack from a different spot and a different angle, they run face first on the 50 pissed off Army Rangers. So the Germans are thinking there's like 1,000 Army Rangers on top of this hill, but regardless, they keep on attacking and they keep on shelling. And after 24 hours, when they're supposed to be getting reinforcements, comes down to himself and about 45 other men that can fight. He calls for reinforcements, but there's none available because the Germans are also furiously attacking the town next to the hill as well. D-Day is commonly referred to as the longest day, but according to Liddell, this was by far the longest day of his life, and it made D-Day look like childhood. Which sounds absolutely crazy, but if anybody would know, it's him. At this point, there's no reinforcement on the way. He has a ton of injured men, a ton of men have been killed, and he only has like 25 guys left that can even kind of fight. He knows that he can't keep doing this much longer, if at all. So at this point, Liddell pulls his NCOs aside and asks them what they think about retreating. He figures they can get all the ambulatory men off the hill, and all the men that are too wounded to be wounded can be captured by the Germans. He's been fighting them for the past 6 months, and he knows that the Germans are at least going to give them aid to take care of the facility. Every single one of his sergeants is against it. They are ready to fight to the death about it. So Liddell says, okay, that's what we'll do. And the next day, they do the exact same thing all over again. Somehow, they manage to hold on to this hill. That night, after 40 hours of straight combat, the Germans finally let up, and Liddell is able to radio down to the town and say that it's all quiet on the hill. And apparently, they stopped attacking at the town too. So the Rangers down there are finally able to come up and start helping carry all of these wounded men down to the hill. Worth noting, if you've ever carried a grown man on a litter, it is a motherfucker of a job, and that's if it's in good conditions in daylight on level ground. I can't imagine having to carry this many men in the dark down a hill covered in snow on a litter after 40 hours of straight combat. But the Rangers somehow managed to get it done, and despite his hand being messed up, and there was the last man to move the top of that hill as he lets the other Rangers take it over. During the 40 hours of combat for Hill 400, Liddell and 106 other Rangers were wounded, and 19 men were killed in action. 24 hours after the other Rangers take over, they hand it over to another Army unit that relieves them, and 9 days after that, Hill 400 is retaken by the Germans during the Battle of the Bulge. When the Battle of the Bulge kicks off, Liddell is in the convoy heading back to Paris, hopefully to get surgery to save his finger, and because this major group of things just kicks off, his convoy gets diverted and they have to go hold the road in case the Germans show up there. And sure enough, they did. So now, Liddell, being the officer there, has to lead this ragtag group of whoever the fuck soldiers into combat to fight the Germans. He does. They repel the Germans, but Liddell isn't getting burned and blown up and is now suffering from PTSD. So now he's in a field hospital getting treated for internal bleeding. While he's in there, General Eisenhower signs an order that any soldier that's been wounded at least twice and has earned a medal for valor gets 30 days of leave. Liddell qualifies and he absolutely wants to go home for a month. Understandably so. The problem is the doctor's not going to release him until he can send him a stool sample that shows that he's not still suffering from COVID. So he does what absolutely anybody would do. He puts one of his buddies shit in that cup for him, and then he goes home. Once he gets home, he's got to go multiple surgeries to save the use of his hand. Once it's all said and done, the war's basically over. He's not getting shit back overseas. So then, Liddell goes back home, and he proceeds to do absolutely nothing, which completely justifies the guy probably needs a minute to decompress. So this goes on for a couple months, and after a while, his mom has finally had enough of it. She's like, Leonard, go talk to that girl who we were talking to before the war or something. Get out of my house. And Liddell was like, Mom, I don't have anything. I don't have a car. I sent all the money I made during the war back to the U.S. so you guys can get by and save any for myself. I gotta figure out what I'm gonna do about it. At which point, Mom, being a complete badass, is like, here you go. I saved $1,500 out of the money you sent me, and he's able to go buy a brand new car. So he shows up in his new wheels and has his old sweetheart Charlotte. They start dating again. He starts going to law school. He graduates law school. He marries Charlotte. A couple of years into being a lawyer, he gets in trouble because he wrestles with another lawyer inside of the judge's office to settle the dispute. But, you know, everything's going great. It's fantastic. Ends up having a bunch of kids, running his own law firm. The poor kid that was literally kept catching fish and clams and selling them to restaurants during the Great Depression and grew up dirt poor, is now a millionaire lawyer, and he is living the American dream. And my favorite part of the story is he gets older, in his late 50s, his 60s, his 70s. He gets the opportunity to go back to the places that he had battles in World War II. He gets to go back to Point du Hoc. He gets to go back to Hill 400. And when he's at Hill 400, he's kind of a celebrity, and everybody wants to talk to him because the German historians and the German active duty military people there that are giving him the tour and everything want to know how many men did he have on top of that hill. And he's like, not many. Why? And the Germans showed him their books and translated it from their perspective. And up until this point, they had always been under the impression that the Americans had a massive force on top of Hill 400, and that's why the Germans weren't able to retake it. Not only did Lammel's battle tactic work at the time, but it worked so well that he had them fooled for 40 years after the fact. Now, because Hill 400 and by extension the entire battle of the Briskin Forest was such an unnecessary and bloody battle, it was deemed a huge embarrassment and failure by the upper-level leaderships of the U.S. military. Because of that, a lot of the men that partook in that battle that did courageous, heroic, incredible things like Lammel, they never ended up getting the recognition they deserved because the upper-level leadership just didn't want to acknowledge that this battle even happened. They just wanted to sweep it under the rug and not talk. Despite that, over 60 years after the fact, Lammel would finally get awarded a Silver Star for his actions on Hill 400 in 2007. In the later years of his life, Leonard Lammel would end up getting a lot of attention for being the hero that he was during World War II. And his response to that was always, we weren't heroes, we were just good rangers. Thank you for watching. This was the channel for my Splurge. Battle of Christian Whack Bang. Out. You know what? I'm just going to level with you guys. There's no way that you can research people like this and not feel like a giant bitch the entire time, okay? I feel like a big tough guy because I can do a lot of push-ups and I've been doing jiu-jitsu for 15 years. And then you start reading about Bud Lammel, who got shot at D-Day and didn't just walk it off. He proceeded to climb a 100-foot cliff in 10 minutes after getting shot, while he's also continuing to get shot at by Nazis with machine guns. And then he goes and takes out an entire artillery battery by himself, saving tens of thousands of people. And that's just the beginning of this dude's story. Dudes were just built different back then. I don't even know. Regardless, I guess now at least we know the answer to who's the most important man at D-Day. Thanks for watching. There we go.
Our ears returned as normal, and I was sitting with Jack that night, and the next night, Jack said, can't do what they do, they made me to fire my weapon. I only had one clip. He only had one clip. I said, what were you doing? I lost it when we were running down that road. And I don't know where, I just had one clip in my pocket, one clip in my submachine gun. And I said, well, why can't people mind? Because I didn't think about it. So, when we got an unarmed guy up to death with one or two clips.
No matter how you travel, it's good to have a plan. Some people plan every minute. No sleep, bus, museum, another museum. While others only plan to take it day by day. When it comes to your finances, a plan is just as important. You can count on Credit Karma to give you the insights you need to understand your options so you can take charge of your financial path and find your way to money. Explore how you can make financial progress with confidence today. Intuit Credit Karma. Karma you can count on.
This is one of those stories that if they ever actually try to make a movie out of it, they would intentionally ruin it because the truth seems that unbelievable. Today we're talking about a professional boxer, a professional jazz musician, a World War I machine gunner decorated for battle on the battlefield, a spy, the world's first black combat pilot who also is probably the first man to take a Kapuchin monkey into combat as well. And just to be clear, this is not like the A-Team Avengers type group that I'm laying out before you know. This is all one guy. His name's Eugene Bullard. His friends call him Sparrow. Everybody else just call him the Black Swallow. And for further clarification, Eugene is most well known for being the world's first black combat pilot, but honestly, while that is a great achievement, it's one of the shortest and least interesting parts of his life story, which we're going to get to right after we're done. Where are you? You're supposed to do the delete me. This is how we pay the bills that you were shopping. What does that even mean?
Leave me
what is happening right now. Anyways, believe me, biggest sponsor of the channel, you guys know the deal by now. You give them money, they make sure the data brokers on the internet are not selling your personal information. These data brokers are legally required to stop selling your information if you ask them to the right way. Unfortunately, each data broker has a different right way. And Delete Me knows all of them. Not only do they go and they get all that information taken down, they continue to monitor all these data brokers in case they get your information again, and then they tell them to quit selling it again. You can actually do all that yourself. I mean, yeah, you could. You could also wire your own house and grow your own food, but at some point it becomes more cost and time effective to just let the professionals do their job, and plus, they'll probably do a better job to begin with. I mean, here's the results they got for me. They reviewed over 18,000 listings from over 180 different data brokers and got over 3,000 listings removed almost every single month. And to be honest, I have absolutely no idea how long that would have taken me to do it if I decided to do it myself, but I'm 100% sure I would rather just pay Delete Me like $6 a month to do it for me. So if you're like me and you want to give Delete Me a try, I'm going to link in the discount code down below. Let's get back to the video. Alright, October 9, 1895, Eugene Bullard was born in Columbus, Georgia. He is the youngest of 7 siblings to William and Josephine Bullard. And as I'm sure you can imagine, growing up as a black child in the late 1800s, early 1900s in Georgia, aka the South, he experienced racism quite a bit at a very young age. His first exposure to this that he remembers was when he was about 5 or 6 years old. He noticed that all of the other white kids that were his friends started to treat him differently because their parents told him. And to make everything 10 times worse, at the age of 5 or 6, not only does he have to come to grips with the fact that he's losing a bunch of his friends, and that he's going to be treated differently in a negative way for the rest of his life for something totally outside of his control, but around this same point in time, his mother also passes away at the age of 37. And these two horrific circumstances kind of mingle together in his mind. So not only is it every time he experiences racism, he has to deal with just the racism itself, but he's also constantly reminded of the fact, oh, by the way, your mom died when you were a small child. And the way this manifests to young Eugene is he basically just wants to run away. He wants to get away from racism because A, that would be awesome, and B, it's going to allow him to not have to constantly be reminded of the fact that he's talking about. And where he wants to run away to is this place that his grandfather and his dad always told him about where people were racist, a place across the ocean called France. Unfortunately, at this point in time, he's like 6 or 7 years old, and running away across the ocean is an impossible task for him, so he's just going to have to stay put and deal with it. And this all comes to a head about a year later when he's 8 years old. His dad gets into an altercation with him. Now, William Bullard, his dad, is a single father in the South with 7 children. He is working his ass off, doing absolutely everything he can. And the best job he's able to get at the time is working as a longshoreman, unloading cargo ships all day long. Now, he was a big guy to begin with. He's 6'3", but after unloading cargo ships for years on end, he is like 250 pounds of pure muscle on top of it. Because of this, he gets the nickname Big Ox. Now, despite the fact that he is a physically intimidating person, he still gets fucked with a lot of work, quite honestly, because they know that they can get away with it. He's a black guy, this is the South, he's not going to do shit because he's got 7 kids at home that have been starved to death if he's not able to take care of them. So, they just talk shit to his face and they treat him poorly. And Big Ox just puts up with it because it's literally all he can do if he wants to take care of his family. This goes on for months and months, and there's this one dude at work in particular that's always fucking with him. His name's Billy Stevens. And Big Ox just ignores it. Billy Stevens talks shit, Big Ox just turns his back and walks away. One day, Big Ox does just that. He turns his back and goes to walk away. Billy Stevens grabs a hay bale hook and smacks him in the side of the head with it, splitting open all the skin on the skull, and Big Ox is then bleeding everywhere. He turns around, grabs him by the neck and the groin, lifts him over his head, and throws this man off the dock into a cargo ship with a massive thud at the bottom, presumably killed him. Big Ox immediately runs to the office of his boss, Mr. Bradley, who actually likes Big Ox and treats him with dignity and respect, explains what happened. Mr. Bradley tells him, go home, lay low, I'm going to take care of it. Now, Stevens didn't die. Bradley drags him in his office and tells him, hey, you're not going to tell anybody about this, or you're never going to work in this town again. You deserve that. Shut the fuck up. But unfortunately, a bunch of other racist white guys that were working for Doc saw a black man attack a white man. And that night, they go out to the bar, they start drinking, and they come to the conclusion that they should go do something. So that night, while Big Ox is at home with his 7 kids, 2 cars pull up into the driveway, at which point, Big Ox tells his 7 kids, go hide under the bed into the closet. He grabs a double-barrel shotgun, turns off all the lights, and points it at the door as a bunch of parents are banging and screaming in the door into the windows. He's just sitting there waiting in case they break that door down. He's going to have to fight whoever turns the way to save his kids. literally one of the scariest situations that happened in 2024. While that's going on, 8-year-old Eugene Colbert is hiding underneath the bed, horrified because now he's already lost his mom and he thinks he's going to lose his dad and he doesn't know what's going to happen. Luckily, all of the men banging on the door come to the conclusion that nobody's home and they end up leaving. However, this is the breaking point for Eugene. At this point, at 8 years old, he decides, I'm running away. So that's what he does, he runs away. But Big Ox tracks him down and drags him back. So he runs away again. Big Ox tracks him down again and brings him back. This goes on as an 8-year-old, a 9-year-old, a 10-year-old, an 11-year-old. He's constantly running away from home, and Big Ox is constantly tracking him down and dragging him back. But then, as a 12-year-old, he saves up his money, gets $1.50 to buy a train ticket, runs away from home, hops on a train to Atlanta, and once he hits a big city, Big Ox isn't able to track him down. Not really having a plan on what he'd do if he ever made it this far, he doesn't know what to do next, so he's just looking for food and shelter and anybody that can point him in the general direction of the ocean and kind of get on a boat and rest. And what happens is he runs into a group of gypsies that is a Stanley tribe from Britain. They end up telling him, hey, we're not from France, we're from Britain, but Britain's a lot like France, there's not as much racism as there is here in South America. You can hang out with us, we're going to be going back to Great Britain at some point, and we'll take you with us if you want to stay and hang out. So that's what he does. He lives with them for 6 months to a year, and what they were doing in America was they were taking care of horses and doing horse racing. So he learned everything about horses and ended up becoming a professional horse jockey himself. As I'm sure you can imagine, being a black jockey himself, racism absolutely comes up and is definitely an issue for a young Eugene Colbert. At which point he finally, looks at the Stanley tribe and is like, hey, we're going back to Great Britain. I'm sick of all racism. They're like, no, we're not going back for a while. So he's like, cool, I'm going to part ways. I'm going to figure out a way across that ocean right now. So he separates from the Stanley tribe, ends up working his way up the coast. He heads towards Virginia. So he's like 14 years old, ends up making it to this part of Virginia, and then he's just like kind of wandering around like, oh, what the fuck do I do now? Do I go up and just ask somebody if I can hitch a ride across the ocean? Like, what's my plan here? And somebody just starts yelling at him, like, hey, what are you doing? Pick up those boxes. Help me load this ship. Come over here. And then he's like, cool. So he does it, and he just starts working. That's the story of how he got a job as a longshoreman, and he does that for months. Then eventually he's like, you know what? I'm just going to stow away on the ship. So he goes, hops on a cargo ship, no idea where that ship is going. The ship leaves port, and then like a day and a half later, it pulls into another port. And he's like, I don't think the ocean's that small. So they port again, and he asks somebody on the dock, like, hey, where are we? He's like, you're in Virginia. Shit. So he gets off the ship, goes around the port, finds the biggest ship, and thinking like, oh, with the big ship, I'm only going all the way across the ocean, right? So he stows away on that ship. Like a day into this trip, he gets copied, stowaway, at which point all these German sailors, some of them speak English, some of them don't. The ones that are speaking English are like, hey, we recognize you from the dock, you were the kid that flew on the ships. I mean, we can throw you on the brig, we can keep you as a prisoner, and drop you off at the first port we hit. We have to drop you off at the first port we heard this speak or stowaway. But if you'd rather, you can just like work for us and we'll pay you, and then I'll drop you off when we get there. He's like, oh, sounds great. Works his ass off. Everybody on the crew ends up loving him. And because they're all German, Eugene actually ends up learning how to speak German. So he works for the entire voyage. They end up in Scotland. They end up paying him $25 in wages. They give him clothes, office supplies, everything they can because they do like him. And he ends up just walking off the dock into Scotland with basically nothing to make a new life for himself. Now, Scotland at this point in time, definitely different from the South America. Most of the people there, not really racist at all. However, they'd also never really seen a black person. So everybody just calls him Jack Johnson, who's a world heavyweight champion. He's a black man, probably the most famous black man in the world at this point, and everybody just associates him with Jack Johnson.
Because he's black, though, right? Okay.
No, I don't think so.
Not really sure what to do. He ends up being a street performer for a little while, and then he goes back to being a longshoreman full-time, earning a decent wage, and you gotta remember he's like 15, 16 at this point. He's finally going from puberty, and he's being a longshoreman unloading cargo ships all day long, so he just gets absolutely jacked, just like his dad. So he's working Monday through Friday on the docks, and then on the weekends he's being a street performer. And then one day he sees this one performance where there's like, the big bucket of water, and you're sitting on the thing, and somebody throws a ball, hits a target, and dumps the person in the water. And he's like, oh, I'm gonna try that as a completely black guy these people have never seen. I bet I'll make it come. So he gets a dunk tank set up, calls the thing Dunk the Darky, and the entire time he's sitting on the plank or whatever it is that he's sitting on that's gonna drop out when the target gets hit, he's just talking shit to everybody walking by. So he starts making a ton of money. I mean, all the street performances that he did well because he was the only black guy around, and that was a spectacle in and of itself. But now that he's sitting there talking shit to people, the first time these people have ever seen a black man, and he's talking smack to their face, and they get to pay $1 and then dunk it in the water, like, he makes a ton of money. And then he ends up turning it into like this Tootsie Pop type situation, you know, like how many licks does it take? He's like, oh, I've been dunked 9 times tonight, you better try for again. Maybe that'll be the one that's enough to wash the black off me and then I'll look like the rest of you motherfuckers. This thing ends up making him so much money that just working Saturday night, he makes more money than his entire salary as a full-time longshoreman. So now, he's like, fuck it, I'm just gonna do this Friday, Saturday night, I'll make more money and then I have the entire week free to go do something else. So now that he's got all this free time on his hands, he's like, okay, well, what do I want to do now? And he thinks to himself, like, oh, I mean, everybody already calls me Jack Johnson. So as a boxer, I bet I do pretty well as a boxer and make a ton of money doing that if I try by the book. So he tracks down this boxing gym, goes inside. The boxing trainer has like 0 interest in training. But Eugene being Eugene isn't going to take no for an answer. So despite the fact that the boxing coach isn't going to train him, he's like, I'm just going to hang around the gym and I'm going to work here for free. And that's what he does. And he works there for free for months, just doing everything that needs to be done without being paid. So eventually, the boxing coach is like, fuck, fine, okay, put some gloves on, come over here, and he starts training Eugene to box. So that's what he does. He's training full-time to be a boxer Monday through Friday, and then on the weekends, he's making all his money doing the double tank thing. And after about 6 months, he ends up taking his first pro fight at 16 years old. During that fight, he's so fast and borderline untouchable, he ends up earning his first nickname, Sparrow. He crushes it, does great. Now he's making money as a professional boxer. Early on in his career, one of the first cards that he ends up fighting on is being headlined by another black American boxer known as the Dixie Kid. His real name is Aaron Lister. He is the world welterweight champion, and at this point in time, he is currently living in France after leaving America for the exact same reason that Eugene Bullard did, to get away from racism and segregation. So Aaron Lister, presumably seeing a lot of himself inside the young Eugene, goes up to him after his fight and is like, hey, you should come back to me with Paris and train in my gym. To which Eugene is like, absolutely, Paris, France has been the goal my entire life since I was 8 years old. Let's go. And Eugene Bullard is now moving to France. So he gets to France, he learns French, and it's absolutely everything he ever wanted. He's a professional boxer, he's traveling all over Europe. He also picks up being a jazz musician and a street performer. He's living his dream. He's getting to travel around and do what he wanted, and people don't treat him different because he's black. He actually ends up training with a bunch of other famous black boxers that are living in France for the exact same reason, including Jack Johnson, the world heavyweight champion. Unfortunately, like all dreams, you have to wake up eventually. Eugene's wake-up call would come in August of 1914 when the Germans would invade France. At this point in time, Eugene is 18 years old, and he absolutely wants to go fight for his new adopted home. So he goes to the military recruiting office, shows up, and they're like, cool, where's your paperwork? And he's like, I literally have nothing. I left home when I was 12 years old in Georgia with nothing but $1.50 in my pocket. I don't have anything. So they basically kick him off and tell him that he can't go. So he starts asking around how he's going to be able to join and help fight and defend France. And he ends up finding out about the French Foreign Legion. If you don't know the French Foreign Legion, it's pretty much exactly what it sounds like. It is foreigners that fight on behalf of France. Other people that do it have a different reason for doing it. Some of them believe in what France is fighting for and they want to join that fight. Some of them are idealists. Some of them are just looking to get loose and they go over serve in the French Foreign Legion for a couple of years, become a French citizen, and go out and do it. So Eugene goes and he talks to the French Foreign Legion. Unfortunately, he's not going to be allowed to sign up for a couple of more months until he turns 19 years old, which is exactly what he does. He goes and on his 19th birthday signs up for the French Foreign Legion and goes straight into training. Now, the French Foreign Legion is pretty well known and very prestigious, and their training process and their qualification process is known to be extremely tough, and a lot of people don't make it through the competition phase. But at the end of the day, this is Eugene Bullard we're talking about, right? He was a professional horse jockey at the age of 12. He's been doing manual labor with grown men since he was 13, and he's been a pro boxer since he was 16 years old. There's nothing that this training is going to throw at him that he hasn't voluntarily done for himself already. So Bullard obviously absolutely crushes it, graduates top of his class, becomes a legionnaire. And because he did so well in training, he gets rewarded by getting to carry the machine gun into battle. Honestly, it's just nice to know that all the other militaries across the planet do the same exact shit. Like, oh wow, you did a great job. Here's your reward. I can carry the heavy gun. Also, as soon as we get into a firefight, everybody's going to shoot at you first. But Eugene doesn't care. He's ready to go off and fight for his new home in France. He's part of the 3rd Marching Corps of the French Legionnaires, and they received orders to go to the Western Front near the Somme River in November of 1914. So So they kick off marching on foot, and they reach the western front by early December. And according to legend, one of the first things that Eugene Bullard is told to do is to go and guard one of the flanks during a major German offensive where he was the front line to keep all the other legionnaires from being overflanked. Bullard's manning his machine gun, cutting down wave after wave of German, while the rest of the men in his team run back and forth, getting more and more ammo forward to continue doing this. This went on for so long, and the gun got so hot that it actually boiled off all of the water in its water cooling system, and the gun overheated entirely and was no longer on. Okay, this is not good. The Germans are still coming. There's no time to run off and get more water, and they can't hold this flank with just bolt-action rifles. They got to do something, and they need to do it fast. So Eugene, thinking quick, does the only thing that comes to mind. He climbs out of the trench, stands up in front of his machine gun, opens up the water cooling tank, and proceeds to piss into it in front of all of the Germans. And somehow, thankfully, he doesn't get here. I don't know if that's divine intervention. I don't know if the Germans had also never seen a black guy, so they were just taken off guard by seeing this dude jump out of a trench and piss into a machine gun, you know, like, what? Oh my god, the French have Jack Johnson on their side. But I mean, realistically, it's probably just plot armor because he's the main character. Regardless, he successfully defends his flank, fighting continues for about a week and a half, and then it's Christmas 1914, and Eugene Bullard is there and takes part in the famous Christmas truce of 1914, where soldiers from both sides leave their trenches, meet in no man's land, and celebrate Christmas together. After that, in early 1915, Bullard and the Legionnaires continued to fight in the Battle of Champagne, where Bullard was not defending flanks, he was storming enemy trenches. And as I'm sure you can imagine, this particular type of close-quarter combat really favored Bullard with all his boxing experience. And one of the things that he said was that when he would storm into a trench, these trenches were so full that it was hard to tell after he really killed a man, because there literally wasn't room for that guy to fall down dead. And Bullard is fighting in this type of environment for months and never once gets seriously injured until his unit is finally pulled out, not because the battle is over, but because his unit has experienced a 50% casualty rate. Despite that, Bullard is still relatively young. So at this point, Bullard's unit is going to be disbanded, at which point all of the men that are still capable of fighting are going to be given a couple of options. You can A, just be done. You can get out of the war, you've done your part, thanks for your service, fuck off. But you're not going to get your citizenship because you haven't served the full 3 to 5 years in the French Legion, if that's what you want. So option B is that you can get sent over to North Africa where there's significantly less combat. Or option C, you can get re-stationed with the 170th French Infantry and continue to fight in the trenches of Europe. Now, most of the men choose to be sent over to North Africa because trench warfare is absolutely terrifying. But Eugene Bullard isn't here because he wants to defend a bunch of French colonies in North Africa. No, he's here because he wants to defend his new home, Paris, France, and that's exactly what he's going to do. He's one of the few men that volunteers to join the 170th Infantry Regiment of the French Army. So he trades in his Legionnaire's uniform for a French infantry uniform and goes right back into combat. Now, the 170th Infantry Regiment is a famous unit in the French military, and their nickname is the Swallows of Death. And after years of Eugene Bullard's performance in the Legionnaires and then continuing to perform at that same level, if not higher, in the 170th Infantry Regiment, it doesn't take long before he's officially given the nickname the Black Swallow of Death. From here, Bullard fights in the Battle of Verdun, one of the deadliest battles in World War II, with over 1 million casualties, and unfortunately, Eugene Bullard was one of them. Shortly after Bullard and the men of the 170th took an enemy trench, the Germans would hit it with artillery fire, and the piece of that shrapnel would end up hitting Eugene Bullard in the face, cutting open the side of his face and ripping out most of his teeth on the right side. Despite that, Bullard manages to keep himself in the fight. Now, at this point, most people, at a minimum, would lay low, but not Eugene Bullard. That night, the commander of the 170th needs a volunteer to run through half a mile of machine gun fire and artillery fire to receive important intelligence orders from the chain command and bring it back to him. And Bullard volunteers to lead the group. Bullard, despite his injuries, manages to get this done and is actually put up for the French Croix de Guerre because of it, which is the equivalent of a Bronze Star. The very next day, Bullard is hit with artillery again, fracturing 2 vertebrae in his back and blowing off a chunk of his thigh that required 90 stitches to shut. He's sent back to Paris where for the next 8 months he is going to have facial reconstruction surgery, he's going to have rehab, and desperately try to regain his ability to walk. While undergoing treatment, he obviously meets a bunch of other soldiers that were also wounded, one of which was a commandant in the French Air Force, and he recognized with Bullard, you know, if you're not going to be able to go back and be a ground pounding infantryman, maybe you can be a machine gunner and plane. You don't need to walk and run around for that, and since your leg and walking is no longer your strong suit, you can still shoot machine guns. Why don't you go to aerial gunnery school? I can make it happen on a commandant. So that's what Bullard does. He requests to go into aerial gunnery school, and he is granted that request, considering the fact that he already has a Croix Guerre and a bunch of other French service medals, and he is going to be going to aerial gunnery school, but he's got a couple of weeks to leave where he can go out and hang with his friends in Paris before he does that. And one of his friends was this guy by the name of Jeff Dixon. He was this rich dude who lived in Paris, and when they were out drinking one night, he ends up betting Bullard $2,000 that he could become the world's first black combat pilot, and Bullard accepts the bet. Now, does Bullard have $2,000? No, but he is the main character, and he knows he's going to make it happen.
How about you, Did you make that deal? Damn good deal.
So Bullard goes off to aerial gunnery school, and as luck would have it, on his very first day there, he runs into a pilot by the name of John Navarre, one of France's very first ace pilots ever, who's a huge boxing fan, and is actually a fan of Eugene Bullard, and he ends up helping Bullard get into the pilot program, getting him through the pilot program, taking him under his wing, and teaching him everything he knows. So Bullard goes, graduates pilot school, becomes the world's first black combat pilot. And just for the record, pilot school at this point in time is absolutely terrifying. You gotta realize, fighter planes in World War I are all single-seat aircrafts, okay? There's no, you get to go up in the air with a co-pilot who knows what they're doing, and they can talk you through it, and if something goes wrong, they can recover the controls from you. No, it's like, once you go up, it's all you, bro, that's it. Okay, most of us had to learn how to drive with a driver's ed teacher running the brakes and eventually the steering wheel, and that's just going forward, backward, left, and right. He's going forward, backward, left, right, up, down, and there's wind on what amounts to a fucking kite with an engine attached, okay? Absolutely terrifying, but he manages to do it. Now, what do you do when you're in the military and you graduate a tough course and do something impressive? That's right, you get some leave, you go out and you drink with your buddies, and that's exactly what Eugene Bullard does. He goes back into Paris, tracks down Jeff, and is like, hey, I'm the world's first black combat pilot, where's my $2 grand? Jeff, man of his word, pays up. And this is my favorite part of the story because now, according to legend, they go out on the town, they get absolutely hammered, and at some point, Bullard ends up winning a Capuchin monkey in a game of dice. So you wake up the next morning, you've got like $1,800 in cash left, you've got a Capuchin monkey, what do? Obviously, you pay money to have a custom monkey-sized leather bomber jacket made, and a set of goggles, and a little headset, so that your monkey can go on all your missions with you. Oh, and then you gotta name him, obviously, so we named the monkey Jimmy, and then because flying around with a Capuchin monkey wearing a bomber jacket and goggles isn't enough style points, we're also gonna get a custom paint job on our plane of a heart with a dagger going through it that says all blood runs red across the side. Now, Jimmy and Eugene were only actually on active flight duty for like 90 days, and during that time he claimed to have shot down like 5+ planes, but the problem is how to get a confirmed kill during World War I is actually really difficult. You essentially had to shoot down an enemy plane over your territory so that you could go and actually track down the wreckage. If you shot down an enemy plane and then you shot them down over enemy territory, or you shot them down over your territory and they managed to lift their plane into enemy territory, they couldn't confirm that that plane was down, so it never actually counted. So while Eugene did shoot down somewhere between 5 and 7 enemy planes, none of them could officially be confirmed because the wreckage didn't make it into friendly territory. However, 2 of them were probable, meaning that another friendly pilot witnessed him shoot down and heavily damage the enemy plane before it went into enemy territory. So after 3 months and 25 missions, Eugene goes out to the bar one night and he is wearing his appropriate uniform with all of his medals. And at this point, Eugene has done a lot for the French military and he has been appropriately awarded for it. He has the Croix de Guerre, he has the Blue Medal, very Mark, and he has like, I believe, 13 other medals on his chest, more than most soldiers have. Because of that, a racist officer at the bar that night goes up to Eugene, accuses him of basically stolen valor, saying that he's wearing medals and he didn't actually earn, and the altercation escalates until Eugene Bullard ends up knocking him the fuck out. Now, despite the fact that that guy totally deserved it, he is a superior officer, and Bullard did in fact strike him, and the sentence for that is 5 years of hard labor. However, considering the circumstances and the fact that Bullard was so well decorated for battle, they decided that they were not going to sentence him to 5 years of hard labor. They were instead going to send him back to the 170th Infantry, where he would then basically be a glorified janitor for the rest of World War I. And to make things even worse, at some point during this period in time, Jimmy, his loyal Capuchin monkey, does end up dying from influenza, and the entire military base has a funeral for him. So yeah, Jimmy dies, and Eugene ends up spending the rest of World War I scrubbing toilets. Definitely not the happy ending we were hoping for. Luckily, this is nowhere near the end of Eugene's story. So World War I comes to an end, Eugene gets released from service, not really knowing what to do next, he just goes back to pro boxing, goes in there, has his first fight, his legs are still messed up, he can't move as quick or as fast as he used to. Despite that, he goes in there, knocks out his opponent, but he breaks his right hand with the process. And to make things worse, the promoter slips out the back door before he pays Bullard, so Bullard doesn't even get paid for this pro fight where he just broke his hand. So Bullard chases his promoter down the alley, chases him down, knocks him on the ground, roughs him up a little bit, takes a wad of cash out of his jacket, takes exactly the amount that Bullard was supposed to get paid, takes that for himself, and throws the rest of the money at the guy, and goes back home. So at this point, Bullard comes to grips with reality. He's not the young man he once was. He's got a messed up leg. He's got a messed up back from the war. On top of that, he just broke his hand. He's not going to be able to be a prize fighter for much longer, if at all. So he decides he's going to retire from pro boxing. And he decides his next thing is going to be teaching boxing. So he takes all the money that he had saved up from the war, from that bet he won, from winning that prize fight, and he goes and he opens his own boxing gym. Right out of the gate, it's a huge success. He already knows all the pro boxers in town. He's known as a war hero. Like, of course you want to send your kid to go learn how to box from Eugene Bullard, the Black Swallow of death. Like, the dude could not be successful at this. So, the boxing gym is a huge success. He takes the money that he makes from that and reinvests it into a cafe. And that cafe turns into a bar/nightclub. Now, because all the world-class pro boxers in the area want to go and train at Bullard's gym, but it only makes sense that they're also going to want to go drink and hang out at his bar at his nightclub. And you want to know who enjoys hanging out with all the world-class boxers? All the rich, famous, wealthy people in the area as well. So now, Bullard's nightclub/bar turns into this really high-end establishment. The problem is, bars at this point in time have to close early in Paris, but there's a loophole. The bar sells individual drinks, so what Bullard does is he changes it, and he no longer sells a pint of beer, a drink of whiskey. He only sells full bottles. He turns it into a bottle club, meaning that he doesn't have to shut down at all. So now, not only is he attracting super high-end clientele, they're also going to be spending a ton of money, and he doesn't have to shut down like everybody else. So Bullard's Bottle Club ends up being the place to hang out and party in Paris if you're rich, powerful, and famous. All the high-ranking military officers are going there. Bullard's buddies are all. Okay, Louis Armstrong.
Alright, you shut the fuck up.
You know, Louis Armstrong, the famous jazz musician that sings It's a Wonderful World. Josephine Baker performs at his club, who was like the it girl at this point in time. Okay, F. Scott Fitzgerald is his personal friend, the guy that wrote The Great Gatsby. Hemingway ends up hanging out there so much that he based a character off of Eugene Bullard. Okay, the fact that most people have no idea who Eugene Bullard is, despite the fact that he's like one of the biggest main characters of all time, is absolutely insane. Okay, not only are all the other main characters from all over the world flocking to his nightclub in Paris to hang out with him, but people that are seemingly nobodies, that are just adjacent to him, somehow, seemingly through divine intervention, go on to also become humongous main characters. Because you want to know who the dishwasher is at Eugene Bullard's Bottle nightclub? It's fucking Langston Hughes. One of the most influential people of the 20th century is doing dishes in the back at Bullard's club. So Bullard is like the pinnacle of social society in Paris at this point in time. Like, everybody wants to hang out at his nightclub. He's a war hero. Everybody knows who he is. So during this time, he also ends up falling in love and marrying a woman by the name of Marcel. And Marcel is basically this heiress to this super rich French family. So they end up dating for a while. They end up getting married. Everything's going great. They decide they're going to start having kids. She ends up giving birth to Bullard's son, who unfortunately passes away at 6 months old from pneumonia. This scars Bullard for the rest of his life. Despite that, they do end up trying to have more kids, and in 1924, they're lucky enough to have a daughter, Jacqueline, and again in 1927, they have another daughter, Lily. And for the next couple of years after that, he's living the dream. He's getting everything that he hoped that he was fighting for. He's getting to have breakfast and lunch with his daughters every day before he goes off to lunch at his nightclub. He has his, wife that they're fortunate enough that she gets to be a stay-at-home mom, and everything's going great. Unfortunately, when Marcel's parents pass away, they end up leaving her a fortune, at which point she gets a little bit tired of her husband who is working at this nightclub all the time. She's super rich, and she just expects him to sell the nightclub, live off of their fortune, and they can go to the opera, and just have fun for the rest of their life. But that's not who Eugene Bullard is. He wants to work for everything that he has. He wants to punch his own ticket. He wants to make his own way. He doesn't want to live off of another man's fortune, so he refuses to do it. This ends up causing a rift between Bullard and Marcel, and eventually she would end up leaving Bullard and both their daughters. Bullard ends up telling his daughters that the mom actually passed away. I'm not sure why. I'm assuming it's because the mom wanted nothing to do with them, and he thought maybe it would be easier for the daughters to come to grips with the fact that their mom got sick and died, and their mom just doesn't love them. Regardless, Bullard now finds himself in the very same situation that his father was in, a single dad looking out for his kids. And if that wasn't bad enough, as time goes on and we get further from World War I, closer to World War II, more and more travelers are coming into Paris. You have Americans that are coming back to the place that they had fought in World War I to visit, particularly a lot of white men from the South that think that they can act exactly how they act in, I don't know, Mississippi or Georgia at the time, and they think that they're going to be able to come up to Paris and fuck with anybody that happens to be black, particularly Eugene Bullard. And to be completely honest, it pretty much never works out for them. They all get their ass whooped by Eugene Bullard, and then the cops show up, and they're like, oh, wow, now the black guy's going to get arrested because he had the audacity to hit a white man, and that is not the case because the cops show up, and they're like, oh, what's up, Eugene Bullard, kingpin of Paris that everybody loves? Is this another racist asshole that tried to beat you up because you're black? Yeah, cool, we'll arrest his ass. And this happens, like, damn near hundreds of times. In addition to that, there's another demographic of racist people coming into town, the Nazi Party, and he's not putting up with their bullshit either, until he does. And the reason he starts putting up with them is because he realizes he's the perfect spy and he starts working with the French resistance. You see, his high-profile club attracts high-profile Nazi officers, and they view him as just some dumb black guy who definitely can't speak French and German and English, so they can just say whatever they want in front of him because he's not going to be able to understand what they're talking about. So he eavesdrops on high-profile Nazi officers all the time and reports it back to the French resistance. And he's so effective at it, they actually end up assigning him like a full-time French resistance spy. Her name is Cleopatra Carrier, or as everybody calls her, Kitty. In addition to working with Kitty, he also starts to get Josephine Baker, the famous woman I mentioned earlier, to start being a spy as well. Now the problem with that is him catering to Nazis kind of pisses everybody off, and he can't just go out and tell everybody like, hey, I'm actually being a spy and setting up. So he just kind of has to like let everybody think that he's being friendly with the Nazis when that's not his role at all. So the general public's kind of pissed off at Eugene, and this all comes to a head when this drunk gangster comes staggering into his club at like 2 p.m. asking where Bullard is. So Eugene comes out from the back, and this gangster immediately shoots him in the stomach. Now Bullard, having just been shot, immediately collapses. No, I'm just kidding. The man has bomb armor. He then proceeds to bum rush the guy, take the gun away from him, and then beat him unconscious and halfway to death with a bottle of booze before collapsing. So his partner Kitty and his employees end up getting him to the hospital. Eventually, the doctor examines him, basically says the bullet ricocheted around inside your intestines before exiting by your right hip. You're like 99% gonna die and start getting your affairs in order. Sepsis is gonna set in soon. I'm sorry. To which Bullard basically replied like, nah, I'm good, actually. I'm a very busy guy. I've got kids I gotta take care of, employees, running a couple of businesses, being a spy. I'm too busy to die right now. Basically just wills himself to live after the doctor told him he's gonna die, makes a full recovery, he's perfectly fine. Now, the gang that Shooter was a member of was actually hardcore anti-Nazi, and they were working with a branch of the French resistance, but it was a different branch than what Bullard was working with. So they basically put a hit out on Bullard to have him killed because they thought he was a hardcore Nazi sympathizer. Not realizing he committed the same thing the entire time, the whole thing was just one big miscommunication. So the gang members apologize profusely, they pay him off and beg him not to press charges. They give him a bunch of money, to make up for all the money that he lost by not being able to operate his club the entire time, at which point Bullard is like, okay, I guess, and that's pretty much it. So Bullard goes right back to doing what he was doing. He's running his businesses, he's being a spy, everything's going fine, and then one day from the French resistance, he gets word that, hey, the Germans they're kind of onto you. They don't know exactly who you are, but they do know that one of our top spies is a black dude that either runs or works in this nightclub, and he's like one of our top guys, which kind of narrows it down to you, so just be aware of that. But it's not really an issue because the Germans haven't invaded France until they do, and as soon as that happens, now it's a humongous fucking issue. So after the Germans invade France, he basically has to board up all his businesses. It's impossible to run a business in France at this point in time, and at this point he has two options. He either has to A, cut and run, flee to a different country, or B, at the age of 44, he has to go get a gun and fight the Germans. And this is Eugene Bullard, so he tracks down the 170th Infantry Regiment, his old unit, and he's going to go fight with them. He takes a couple $100, gives the rest of his life savings to his partner Kitty, tells Kitty to watch after his girls until he comes back, and if he dies, get his girls somewhere safe. He loads up a 50-pound backpack with wine, cigarettes, and sardines, which is basically beef jerky, and heads off to the front line to link up with the 170th at the age of 44 years old. Okay, can we just take a minute to appreciate what a fucking gangster Eugene Bullard is? Like, the Germans attack, everybody else is fleeing the country, and his immediate knee-jerk reaction is like, I need a big backpack, I need cigarettes, booze, canned meat and money for more cigarettes. I'll find a gun along the way. I'm gonna go fight these motherfuckers again, double or nothing. At the age of 44. So that's it. Bullard sets off. He's gonna go rejoin the 170th and fight the Nazis. He gets about halfway there, and then suddenly all the people are headed the other direction, including a bunch of wounded soldiers. The 170th has been completely wiped out. So Bullard's like, okay, cool. I'm gonna turn around too. I'll head back to Paris, check on my kids. I'll find out where a different army unit is, and then I'll go join them. So he gets back to Paris. Germans already have control of it, and it is under complete lockdown. He can't even get in there to check on his kids. Now, there's still pockets of resistance, so he starts asking around, finds out that there's a big unit right outside of Lyon, so he heads that way, ends up linking up with some of the soldiers there, at which point he's like, okay, I'm just going to join you guys. They're like, yeah, you're kind of old, you need to go talk to the major in charge. So they send him that way. He goes to the major, walks in, sure enough, it's a guy that he thought would have met with done. This major immediately recognizes Bullard as the complete badass he was from World War I. He immediately promotes him to sergeant and gives him control of a machine gun squad. He then sends them out to this smaller village outside of Lyon so that they can defend it. On their way there, they get ambushed by the Germans, and they get hit with German 88 artillery fire. And it ends up killing 11 men, wounding 16, including Bullard. One of the shells lands about 10 feet from him. It launched him 40 feet through the air and smacked him into the side of the building, shattering one of the vertebrae in his neck, breaking multiple ribs, messing up his entire side, and obviously giving him a humongous concussion. He gets drug out by one of the medics. He comes to in a hospital, at which point they're like, dude, we're going to get overrun by Nazis at any minute. You're a black American that's fought against them in World War I and World War II. If they catch you, they're going to kill you on the spot. You need to get out of here. So he grabs his stuff and just starts limping his way to Biarritz, where the American embassy is, so he can get a passport, hopefully get sent over to America, where he's going to be safe. He walks all through the night, gets about halfway there, and then in the morning, there's this field, and out of this field, there's this soldier sitting up against a tree with a bicycle, so he walks out, it's a French soldier, so he's like, hey, can I have breakfast with you? Can I hang out for a minute? I'm going to sleep here for a bit. Can you look out for me? The soldier's like, yeah, sure. And he's like, do you have any food or water or anything? I'm starving. I'll trade you my bike, whatever. So he ends up trading him a couple of cans of sardines for this bike, takes a nap, grabs this bike, rides it over to Biarritz, gets to the American embassy, okay. The embassy lets him cut to the front of the line because he's in a military uniform that's still all bloody and he's clearly wounded. He explains everything that's going on and he's like, I don't have a passport though. I left when I was 12. I ran away. I smuggled myself up to shit in Scotland and I made my way over to France. So the American embassy's like, shit, okay. And they drag him in the back and they're getting all the information. Where were you born? What's your birthday? There was somebody there that was actually from Columbus, Georgia, and he's kind of quizzing him on the area, making sure that he's not lying. And he knows absolutely everything about Columbus, Georgia, passes the test, and like, okay, this guy's legit. So they fill out the paperwork for him to be able to get a passport. The problem is, you can't actually get the passport there. You can just get the paperwork okaying you to get the passport there. You have to go to a different town, 175 miles away, to get your picture taken and to have the right person sign off on your new passport. Now at this point, you would think surely you could, I don't know, maybe hook a guy up and fucking make it work, but no, absolutely not. This is the government. We have to stick to our bureaucratic nonsense. Eugene Bullard hops back on his bike and takes 2.5 days to pedal his ass 175 miles away. He finally gets there 2.5 days later. They're closed because everybody's out at lunch. Typical government nonsense. So he takes a nap. And they show back up from lunch, gets his passport, does the paperwork, gets his picture taken, the whole thing takes like 3 hours, comes back outside, he's gonna pedal his ass back 175 miles. Somebody stole his fucking bike. So now, he walks 175 miles back. No, I'm just kidding. He actually steals somebody else's bike and rides that back. Okay, look, I'm here for it. There's only one thief in the army. Everybody else is just trying to get their shit back. Them's the rules. So another 2-day bike ride, makes it back to Biarritz, gets to the embassy. They immediately put him on his way back to America. He has to go through Spain, then through Portugal. The entire trip takes like 2.5 weeks. He winds up in New York City and he immediately starts doing anything he can to make money and calling up any connection that he can possibly think of, desperately trying to figure out if his daughters are okay, and if they are, how he's going to get them back to America. And this goes on for months, just desperately trying to figure out how to get into contact with his daughters and potentially get them back to America. And then he actually manages to get in contact with one of his old buddies, a guy that hung out in his club all the time, the ex-ambassador to France on behalf of America, Mr. Bullock, and he still works in the United States State Department. So he gets a hold of him, ends up having a meeting, explains the situation. Mr. Bullock makes one phone call, and the next day, Bullard finds out that his daughters are okay, and they are now in American custody and protection, and they are going to be sent back to America to be rejoined. Now, the United States government is going to front the money, but Bullard is going to have to pay them back. Has no idea how he's going to be able to do it. Veterans groups find out, they raise money, they pay off the entire thing. Bullard gets reunited with his daughters Jacqueline and Lolita, and they are now living in a 750 square foot apartment in Harlem, while Bullard goes back to being a longshoreman, doing anything he can to make money and raise his daughters. A couple of months go by, everything kind of stabilizes, they're getting used to their new environment, everything's starting to look good, so naturally, Bullard, being Bullard, goes to the recruiting office of every branch of the United States military, volunteering for service because he wants to go back and keep fighting the Nazis. They politely decline. So Bullard just keeps working, keeps raising his daughters. This goes on for years and years, and then eventually his daughters grow up, they get married, they move off and do their own thing, and he is now just in this apartment by himself. After World War II came to an end, he tried to reestablish his rights of ownership to his gym and his nightclub. Unfortunately, nothing ever came of it. He was at least able to get France to recognize his military service, so France was now paying him a military pension for being a veteran. So Bullard's just kind of working, doing his thing. Then the 1950s roll around, and one of his little buddies hits him up, a guy by the name of Louis Armstrong, one of the most famous jazz musicians of all time. He was like, hey, I'm in New York. I need a backup drummer. My guy's sick. You want to come out? I got to do some recordings. So Eugene Bullard is actually on recordings with Louis Armstrong being his drummer in like multiple songs. He's literally like the Black Forest guy. Like, he's done so much random, incredible shit, it doesn't even make sense. And by this point in time, Eugene's getting up there in age. He's really starting to feel all of his old war injuries. He can't keep being a longshoreman any longer. He needs to get a job that's a little bit easier on his body. So he ends up getting a job as an elevator operator at Rockefeller Center. The craziest part about this is nobody has any idea who Bullard is in America. They've never really talked about it. He's never really been pressed. He's like a legend over in France, but he's just a humble elevator operator. And eventually, before the elevator operator was requested by the French government to fly over France and likely come up plane to the tune of the French soldier Richie Betts. And then he just goes right back to operating the elevator industry. And then, in 1959, he is called upon by France again. He is awarded the Captain of the Air, which is the French equivalent of the Medal of Honor. And he is also made a Knight of France. Those combined with the Croix de Guerre that he already has comprise the three highest honors that the government of France has bestowed on anyone. And he's got all of them. Now, the entire time he's been an elevator operator, he's always like wearing a couple of medals or two. Nobody really says much about it. They don't recognize what they are. They're French medals. Why would anybody know that? And then he comes back and he's got, the Legion of Honor, the medal that made him knight, and he wears that to work one day. And there's this guy, his name's Dave Garroway. He's the host of the Today Show, a very, very popular show at the time. And he hops in the elevator with Gene again for probably the 1,000th time. For whatever reason, to this day, Dave Garroway recognizes that medal. He's like, Gene, what is that? He's like, oh, it's the Legion of Honor. It was just awarded for recently. He's like, what? And Gene, just being Gene, was like, yeah, I fought in World War I and World War II. I was the first black combat pilot ever. So I kind of have some medals. At which point, Dave Garroway's like, do you want to get interviewed? Like today? Like right now? And he Bullard was like, I'm working. I have to find somebody to cover my shift. And he's like, I'll make the phone call. Trust me, it's fine. Just come on. We're going to get interviewed on live TV right now. So he goes on live TV for 15 minutes in his elevator operator's uniform. The whole thing goes viral in the 1950s. He ends up calling on a bunch of other news shows. They all request that he wear his elevator operator's uniform because it's like kind of restricted, I guess. But regardless, he gets his 15 minutes of fame and people finally start to know graphic stories. All this abuse from the public actually inspires him to keep up with the author and have his memoirs written and hopefully get them published. Unfortunately, once they were finished, no publisher wanted to publish them because it's like, well, the story's too unbelievable. Luckily, there are several books written about him, both of them called All Blood Runs Red, one by Henry Harris and one by Phil Keith. From here, he has one last one. The president of France. They're making a huge deal out of it. There's a parade when he gets here. They're like, fighting him, and he's watching him go to Saks and back to shopping. He's got the speaking engagement at this auditorium with like 5,000 people. Eugene Bullard shows up to speak. The president, he walks in, the crowd cheering. He locks eyes with Eugene Bullard, and he sees him. The president walks straight up to him and says, Eugene Bullard, which he says, yes, Mr. President, I am. And he goes to shake his hand, and the president kind of swats his hand away and pulls Eugene in for a bear hug and says, all of France knows you're a great dad, because everybody cheers. It's the perfect moment. Like, it's the end of Lord of the Rings. It's perfect. 3 days after his 66th birthday, he would pass away. The last person to visit him was he offered his memoirs, Louise Hart. When she got there, he was unconscious in bed, laying in, hooked up to a room, and she's kind of crying, because the last words that he ever said was he pulled out his breathing tube and said, "Don't threaten me, it's easy." The dude can't even die without being a complete badass. At his request, we buried in his simple plot of Federation of French War veterans, secondary offense. His grave is marked by a one foot slab of concrete on top of it, bearing his name, his date of birth, and his date of death. Also, at his request, we buried each of his not his flag uniform, not the fancy suit that he wore while he was a spy in Angola, not with a set of boxing gloves, but in his French uniform. Which tells me that at the end of the day, despite living one of the most incredible lives in history, he didn't want to be remembered as the most violent of that time, so a professional boxer, a spy, and Angola. He wanted to be remembered as a man who fight for the country, the battle, and fight for liberty, just like the Indians. Thank you for watching. That's what this movie channel is. Go buy some merch. I think battlefish.com. Whack bang. Okay, good. Now that I want to come back here, all of them infinitely more badass than any man I would ever do. He has the audacity of being a professional male model the entire fucking time he does it. This is outrageous. Okay, I gotta go like hug my kids or something. I feel like I've accomplished nothing from my life. I just think a lot of what I've been making YouTube videos for about 3 years. We're going to got recommendations from hundreds of thousands of different videos. Some of them I haven't gotten around to yet. Some of them I'll never do because it enriches me. And then there's another category of topics that I'm actively avoiding because, to be honest with you, they intimidate me because the stories that I have this is dude, I'm the greatest of all time, an undefeated boxer with a 100% knockout rate, probably the greatest machine gunner to ever live, John Bassler. He's easily one of the most recognizable and renowned warriors in American military history. For good reason, he has received the Medal of Honor and the Navy Cross. And the only reason he got the Navy Cross is because he quit letting people get the Medal of Honor twice. But we're going to get this and we're going to get this after work for sponsor. Yeah, there was something. Okay. This video is brought to you by Repeat Me, a super simple business model. If you give them money, they come around and they make sure that all my data workers are going to send them your personal information online. And this deal, pretty much anytime you use a free service on the internet, you click that little box that says, I agree to the terms and conditions. As much of your personal information as humanly possible, they then turn around and sell that on the data brokers, and that's how they can feel to offer you a free service. Go down, they know they monitor all of these online data brokers for your personal information, and then if they find it, they submit all the opt-out forms on your behalf so they have to take them and install some of that information. So when you buy from me, you're not actually buying anything, you're just buying your way out of all the negative consequences of all the free shit that you learn about. And because you continue to monitor the data brokers, you're buying yourself out of all the future negative consequences of all the free shit that you haven't even gotten yet. So we want to get the time to do this kind of go down below. Let's get back to the video. John Bassler was born on November 4, 1916, Buffalo, New York. He spent his entire childhood growing up in Warrington, New Jersey. He was the sixth of 10 children with 2 older brothers, and both of his parents were first-generation immigrants in his military community. And like pretty much all World War II vets that we've ever talked about, he grew up in poverty during the Great Depression. Despite that, his father truly believed that America was the greatest place on earth. It was the land of opportunity, and he instilled that in all of his kids. Growing up with 2 older brothers in New Jersey, John got really tough really quick. He was extremely stubborn, he rode that line between bravery and stupidity with everything he did, and was not sword did not become his pet, but it goes to show that he is never gifted with an extreme amount of bravery or stupidity in order to explain how good he is. Now, around the same point as childhood, John was young and someone who wanted to go movie theaters, they watched a movie about box. And this movie inspired John and his older brothers to all want to be boxers. The problem is that the boxers didn't marry him. He can't afford to box with his brothers just for time to do the They all start jumping rope. The problem is they don't have jump ropes and they can't afford it. So they start jumping rope with it close. They started chopping wood with an old rusty axe they found. They started doing focus neck drills with their bare hands because they can't afford it anymore. And this goes on for the rest of his childhood. Academically, John struggles in the classroom, but at school, he's not very popular. And it's not that he's dumb. He can do everything. He can read, he can write, he can do math. He just can't stand sitting there for 6 to 8 hours a day looking at a chalkboard until he would zone out, and then the next thing you know, his development of the class would be over. He didn't pay attention to it. Because of this, after graduating from the grade, he informs his parents that he is not going to go to high school and he's going to go out and get a job. Because he's 14 at the time, there's not a whole lot of jobs. Little so he gets the first one to put his hands on and loves being a caddy up to the golf course. And at first, John absolutely loves it. He's outside, he's moving around, he's earning money to feed his family, all these rich businessmen are giving him these huge tips. He's not for a job. When he's not home golf clubs, he's hanging out at the golf course clubhouse with all these rich businessmen. He's teaching about gamble, and he's really good at that. He's still making money doing that. And this goes on for years, and as John turns 16 and then eventually 17, it's going to go out to get a real job. And John absolutely hates it. He resents the fact that society is telling him he has to go out and get something, not this 9-to-5 job that he just has to do every single day for the rest of his life. In his mind, it's going to be just like sitting in that classroom and selling that. And John doesn't want to think he's like crying. Not knowing what to do, John goes to his church, he's praying about it, he's just sitting there, he's hanging out, he's thinking about what he wants to do for the rest of his life. While he's there, an opportunity something with Father Russo comes up, he's going to talk to John, he's clearly troubled, wants to know if he can talk to John, ends up asking Father Russo, who's now pretty much his retired father, like, hey, Father, you're an athletic, you're a doctor, you're a professional athlete, you have 4 women and 8 fingertips. How did you decide? And Father Russo told him he didn't like the call. Get it. The problem is that John thinks that being locked up inside the tank is going to be just like sitting inside that classroom. He absolutely hates the motion. He wants to be outside, moving around, doing things like this. So he picks the next best thing on the battlefield on the machine gun. And this is John from one place. One, he's kind of a bigger guy than the standard of the day, right? He's 5'9", but he's 185 pounds. And on top of that, he's been doing up there lugging around golf clubs for the past 4 years, giving him a kind of spam which is hilarious because he's going to need it because the machine gun back in 1934 was the Browning 1917, which was a fucking machine gun that required 7 foot of water to fill the barrel. Between the gun and tripod, the entire thing was 103 pounds, not including the ammunition. And John was absolutely obsessed with this thing. He knows absolutely everything. He knows where to place it on the battlefield, how to set it up, how to clear everything. They have competition. This is supported. We have supported one of the functions chapter. Completely blindfolded. John brings those competitions every single day. After finishing his training, John gets shipped out to the Philippines, and he spends the next 3 years between 1934 and 1937, and it kind of fucking sucks being a powder keg. Now, this time, the geopolitical climate is absolutely heating up, and war could break out. And if that war breaks out, John is obviously here to defend the Philippines. And as far as John can tell, if war should break out, the Army's only plan is to have all of its troops retreat to a tiny island called Corregidor and try to hold that. Now, this is extremely disheartening for the president. This is John off because remember, he's here to be a warrior. That's his higher point in life. And now he's over here in the Philippines. It's hot. Everything's fucking wet all the time. There's fucking bugs everywhere. He's getting malaria. Everybody else is getting malaria. And he's sitting here just suffering, basically waiting for war to break out. And then when the war does break out, the first thing we're going to do is retreat. That's not what he signed up for. So this bothers John all the way down to this point, the entire time of his life. Despite that,